Spoiler alert. Please be advised that the following video will contain spoilers for Lovecraft Country. What's up, everybody? It is me, E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews. Just got done watching episode 8 of Lovecraft Country. I love this show. I don't know how else to say it. I love this show. It looks like we are taking a break from all the out-of-this-world, mind-blowing, weird stuff. And going back to that good old-fashioned racism, magic, and horror. Matter of fact, I think the vibe from this episode was very similar to the vibe in the very first episode of this series. I mean, now we really get to go back to just dealing with magic and, well, full-blown racism. Now, this episode gave us a number of different answers, especially for episode 7, and I really appreciated a lot of the social commentary that was given as well. So there's a lot to explore in this episode and a lot of different things to touch on, so let's break it down and get to it. We open up to a blisteringly hot day in Chicago where the memorial services for Emmett Bobo Till is being attended to by what seems like the entire black community in the city. People are leaving out of the building throwing up, presumably because of the horrifying sight of Till's face and the putrid smell of the body. Now, since Emmett Till's death is like a major part of this episode, I think it's only appropriate to take some time and give some people who might not be aware the proper context as to why this is such a big deal. Emmett Till was only 14 years old when he was kidnapped and brutally killed for allegedly wolf whistling at a white woman named Carolyn Bryant. He was beaten so badly that his face was not even recognizable. Being killed or lynched by racist white people was not uncommon just 60 years ago in America. It just so happened to be a scary reality that black Americans had to deal with for the most part and still live with that generational trauma to this very day. Now, Emmett Till's mother did something very unconventional for that time by holding an open casket funeral and allowing the national press and civil rights leaders to attend. She wanted the world to see what they did to her little boy. The images were published in the media, and something important to consider is the intentionality behind depicting the image of Emmett Till while alive, juxtaposed to the image of his mother standing over his corpse. Now, that is a stark contrast to the more modern day notion of trying to dig up irrelevant negative things about a black victim in order to justify their murder in the media. All of this combined to create a ripple effect in society that would eventually lead to more civil rights activism, just like the famous Rosa Parks, who decided not to give up her seat on that bus. By the way, if you're wondering about the murderers in this case, J.W. Millam and Roy Bryant were both acquitted of murder by an all-white jury, and as for Carolyn Bryant, who accused Till of whistling at her, 62 years later, she confessed and said that she lied about the entire ordeal. This is America. We see that this funeral included members of the Nation of Islam, preachers, and members of the press of other civil rights leaders. We cut to Diana, and Dee is clearly suffering throughout this entire ordeal. Ruby questions whether or not this was a good idea to even bring her to the funeral, but Montrose followed up by saying, "Ain't no way around this. This is every Negro's rite of passage in this country." Montrose's words right there, I felt that. Those were some really powerful words, and the rite of passage for black people still feels relevant to this day. I believe the rite that he's talking about is the sad wake-up call of racial injustice that still exists in this country. I mean, it's damn near impossible for a black person in America today to navigate through this country without witnessing the reckless death and murder of innocent, unarmed black people. I mean, I was immediately reminded of, Tamir Rice, who was just a 12-year-old boy playing with a toy gun in a park, minding his own business, until the officer just rolled up and shot him and killed him. Stuff like that is super traumatic for us to watch. And throughout this episode, there's a continuous theme of the violence against black bodies and how it affects different people. Now, we'll dig into that a lot more much later in this breakdown, but what Montrose said was one of the realest commentaries that I don't really want people to miss. Mainly because it shouldn't be a rite of passage for anyone. Why? Because Black Lives Matter. It's been a week since the events of episode 7, and Letty is pushing Tick to tell Diana about the truth about her mother, but Tick is still holding out hope that Hippolyta might return. So from the looks of it, clearly Hippolyta did not come back through the portal, and Tick apparently thinks that she might come back, but he clearly knows something that he's not letting on at this point. So we'll just have to wait and see what else he possibly knows. Diana is walking around, and 2 girls come out eating ice cream and laughing, and Dee picks up some stones to throw at them. She screams and says there's nothing to laugh about. While she's grieving, you can see her laughing just to keep from crying. You can also see the sign on the stores being closed in respect for Emmett Till's murder. Now, the fact that all these stores are closed just shows you the impact of how big the death of Emmett Till really was on the city, and across the nation for that matter. This wasn't just another killing. This wasn't something that only affected Emmett Till's family. This wasn't something that only affected his immediate circle. This was actually affecting the country in many different ways. If we were to compare it to today's times, I would say that what happened with Emmett Till is probably similar to what happened with George Floyd in our times today. So despite everybody in the city, especially all the black folks, knowing clearly well that there was a tragedy going on, you still had these 2 black girls just kind of casually laughing and going about their day. So I can see why Diana was so mad about it. Not to mention the fact Dee is going through a lot. This girl done lost her dad, her mom is missing, and now her best friend got murdered. I mean, that poor girl. And of course, since black folks in this show can't catch a break, the racist police captain and his officer corner Diana in an alley. They question her about the comic book that was found under the dead police officer in the observatory. Dee still believes that her mom is on a road trip for the guidebook, but the racist cops don't believe her story. So, as they question Dee about her mom and magic, they begin casting a spell on her. Oh Lord, of all people, it just had to be the racist police captain. But the spell that he had to come up with, and the spit, oh God, on the baby's forehead too, that was just disgusting. And then on top of that, she's like getting choked out by the police, and when she said she can't breathe, like I said, this was kind of getting a little much. I mean, I had to pause it for a second, to be honest with you, because it's stuff like this that can be triggering. And personally, for me, one of the worst things you could do is spit on somebody. Yo, you spit on me, that's an automatic hands alert, okay? Racist cop or not, try Jesus, don't try me. We go back to Letty's house and see Jihaz there looking for Tick. Tick, however, is visiting Christina at the cemetery. Tick wants to learn how to cast a spell. Christina deduces that he actually wants to learn the spell for protection. In exchange for learning about how to cast the spell, Tick offers the key to Hiram's space time machine. She says that the words are not enough for a spell. You need energy, intention, and a body all in perfect alignment. She shows him a protection symbol and gives him the spell for protection in exchange for the key. Tick mentions the Autumnal Equinox, which startles Christina. And FYI, the Autumnal Equinox, it's 2 moments in the year when the sun is exactly above the equator and day and night are of equal length. Christina then admits to Tick that she's going to achieve immortality, which is something even Titus couldn't achieve. Well, this was kind of a risky gamble to just give Christina the key. I know at that point I was like, Tick, what are you doing? But I did remember that, yeah, the machine is damaged, so, she's not going to be able to use it anyway. As for that autumnal equinox or whatever, I have a theory about that, but I'll share that with you a little bit later on. Diana comes home to have Montrose yelling at her, asking her where she's been all this time, but Dee wants to know the truth about her mom and told Montrose to stop effing lying to her. Now, you know what? I know in the last episode, I told Dee she need to fix her face, but I'm going to give her a pass this time. I'm going to give her a pass. Like I said before, she is going through a lot of trauma and a kid, a lot of stuff that a kid her age really shouldn't have to go through. So yeah, I'm going to give her a pass. Just one. Dee goes to the bathroom to continue rubbing off the spit on her forehead and puts on a Chicago American Giants hat, a nice shout out to the Negro baseball team. She then sees the image on the Uncle Tom's Cabin book change into something monstrous. She immediately dials into the black folks don't play that radar and gets the heck up out of there. We cut to Ruby pulling up to William's house, and one of the white service guys was allergic to minding his own business and yells out asking if Ruby was the maid. Before things get out of hand, William pulls up to de-escalate the situation. You can hear the other white guy reference the Emmett Till murder as quote-unquote that mess across town, getting people all up in arms. He's worried that it'll make its way into their neighborhood. Ruby is clearly shaken by the death of Emmett Till and tells William that Emmett's face looked like a monster. And here's the thing, this is a very clear depiction of social white privilege. On one side of the town, you have an entire city, black folks mourning, grieving, feeling the pain of the death that happened. And on the other side of town, you've got a nice, quiet suburb of affluent white folks who don't want to be bothered with the tragedy. The white people in this area are more invested in protecting and shielding themselves from the pain inflicted on black people by other racist white people. Like I said, this is what white privilege looks like when they talk about it. It's not something earned. It's not something you work for. It's a function of society when racism is at the forefront. And you can see it very clearly because guess what? When you compare it to the black people at the time in this scene, they don't have the luxury to magically ignore and deflect away the trauma and the pain when they see other black folks are dying unjustly. Well, William is about to make Ruby feel good, so he gives her a sponge bath and starts to put the moves on her. Ruby, however, stops him in order to take the blood potion again to turn into a white woman while they get to boot knocking. I thought this scene was fascinating, disturbing, and gross. I'm just sitting here like, why did my brain just see that? And at this point in the episode, I'm just wondering like, yo, what is going through Ruby's mind? Does she just want to have white people sex? Only to transform and be black again? Now, we do thankfully get an explanation for this later on in the episode, but, you know, I gotta say, this show has some wild sex scenes. However, they're not just doing random sex scenes just to gross you out or whatever, or maybe they are, but they do all carry some sort of deeper meaning, and they also fit in the context of the show. So I can actually really appreciate that. And once again, shout out to the makeup and special effects department because that whole scene was something. Atticus comes home to find Jiha and Letty waiting to have that talk. Jiha tells him the truth that she is a Kamiho. She explains that when the lover climaxes, she not only absorbs their life force, but she can see their entire lives until their death. She tells Tick that she saw his eventual death, but she doesn't know when or how. Tick demands to know why she even bothered coming, and Letty responds it's because Jiha loves Tick. Tick tells Jiha that their love wasn't real and to get the stepping. Letty and Tick get into a heated argument, and Tick leaves saying that he's going to go cast a protection spell. Alright, couple of things to talk about here. First of all, Tick was bogus as hell. He ain't have to treat Jiha like that. I mean, this woman flew halfway across the country just to tell you and to hopefully warn you about your upcoming death. Second thing, I think this is more confirmation of how Jiha's powers actually work from episode 6. She does actually get to see a little bit of the person's future that she's having sex with, even though she is the one that normally kills them. So I'm going to stick to my guns here about what I was saying. And if you go back to episode 6, when she first attached herself to Tick, she saw his past life. But then when she kicked him off of him, she started to see his future life. So all the stuff we saw after she kicked him off, I'm going to go along with the idea that that's stuff that's happening in the future in some way, shape, or form. Ruby confronts Christina about the death of Emmett Till. Christina acknowledges that she knows about the incident, but Ruby wants to know if Christina actually cares. Ruby wants her to simply feel what she's feeling at the moment. Look, like I said, there's a theme going on here about the violence against black bodies. And that's something that we just can't ignore. They're going to keep coming back to this point. And this conversation between Ruby and Christina is super, super important. I think what happens here is Ruby is actually saying to Christina what a black person wants to say to all of white America during this racist time period. She wants empathy, not excuses. She wants white Americans to feel guilty, not for being white, not even about slavery. It's not for any of the reasons that white people think black people want them to feel bad about. She wants them to feel guilty for feeling safe. Safe because of their social white privilege. That right there was so human. Ruby is just asking for empathy, which is such a human need. And it's something that historically has been lacking as a whole within the race relations in America. I mean, think about it like this. Rather than trying to deflect or ignore or even victim blame, if more people just took the time to feel some empathy for other people's pain, we really wouldn't have a race problem at all. Ruby then confesses to taking the potion because she didn't want to be a black woman messing around with a white man. Christina admits that not only does she not care about Emmett Till, but she also doesn't care about the white men who escaped justice, and she doesn't care about the outcry in the city either. Now, for Ruby, I thought that her revelation here about, not wanting to mess around with a white man and all that stuff, I thought it was very similar to what happened with Hippolyta. I mean, in the last episode, we saw that Hippolyta was dealing with a case of self-hatred as a byproduct of the racism that she's endured throughout her whole life. I mean, for Ruby, it's to the point where she's feeling, I want to say, a similar level of self-hatred to the point where she didn't even want to be black for that moment. I mean, my gosh, that was really sad to hear. Now, Christina, on the other hand, she was brutally honest. She doesn't care, and she had the unmitigated gall to sit there and say to Ruby that she didn't care at all. I was like, the hell? Christina just juked the entire conversation and spun it into Ruby taking the potion to become a woman doing what she wanted to do. Now, personally, I don't know why Ruby didn't smack the hell out of her right then and there. But then again, maybe Christina was right. Ruby was left there with a real shook look on her face. So do you think that Christina was right about Ruby? As Tick heads out, he runs across Montrose sitting on the curb, and the two have a nice heart-to-heart. Montrose shares the story of a pastor who was lobotomized and sent to a mental institution, all for just being gay. Montrose confesses to hiding his sexuality as a result to simply choosing a life rather than suffering the same fate. He also admitted that he simply wanted a family because that was what his love was built on with Tick's mother. You know what? I thought that was actually a pretty dope moment to demonstrate the intersectionality at play. Look, on one hand, Montrose is a black man during the Jim Crow era who just lived through the Tulsa Massacre. On the other hand, he's gay, and there's some real life or death pressures there. Like I said, that's how intersectionality works. During the conversation, Tick tells Montrose that not only was Letty pregnant, but that he also went to the future after going through the portal. Tick then pulls out the Lovecraft book and says that it was written by his son. Okay, how many of y'all saw that coming? And I want y'all to be brutally honest. So many of us, including myself, first of all, I missed it. The last time when it said it was written by George Freeman. So when I was reading a lot of y'all comments and I saw that, I was like, dang, and I was thinking that was Uncle George. I know some of y'all was thinking that too. Y'all had to think that too. But all this time it was actually Tick's son. I just thought that was a pretty dope fake out. We move on to Letty praying in church, and Letty prays for God's protection for Tick and for Emmett Till's family. Come through, black women. Let's go. Praying for that hedge of protection. Come on now. Black women stay having the brothers' backs. Whew, thank you. We then see Christina entering the church. Oh, I'm just trying to see why she didn't get set on fire automatically. Letty apparently called Christina to make a deal. Letty was going to give up the negatives of Titus's pages in exchange for a spell to make Tick invulnerable. Christina agrees to help, but she puts the mark of Cain on Letty. Not only does it create invulnerability, but it also can miraculously heal people too. Well, a few things here. This spell was also the same spell that Christina's father had on himself. And that explains why in episode 2, he was able to have that live surgery with his spleen or whatever and just be okay. Now that Letty has the mark though, I wonder, is there a price to pay for it too? Just seems a little too good to be true. Also, I don't know if I'm just looking too deep into things, but I thought it was really interesting how Letty was meeting Christina in a church and Tick was meeting Christina in a cemetery. Could this be foreshadowing of some sort? Maybe while the cemetery represents death for Tick, the church might represent being born again for Letty. I don't know, just throwing that out there. Montrose and Tick are trying to figure out what to do next. Tick said that when he went to the future, he was only there for a moment, and when he got there, it was all chaotic with white folks rioting. That is, until a woman in a hood gave him the Lovecraft book and pushed him back into the portal. And this woman apparently also had a robotic arm. Okay, y'all are thinking what I'm thinking here, right? That woman in the hood had to have been Hippolyta. I mean, since she didn't come back, she's clearly, assimilated herself into that futuristic society of people. Now, one thing I'm wondering is, what time in the future did Tick actually go to? When do you think he was sent to the future where white people were rioting or whatever? I kind of got the feeling, and I think it'd be kind of interesting if they do this, I think they sent him to Charlottesville. The Lovecraft book has the Freeman family story according to Tick. Christina is a man, Uncle George survives, Dee is a boy named Horace, and Tick also says that Christina sacrifices him on the Autumnal Equinox to become immortal. So I wonder, when people talk about how this is not like the book at all, I wonder if that was all intentional. If any of you have read the book, were those similarities exactly how it played out in the book itself? Because if it did, I think it's actually pretty dope that the show is created a parallel universe where the book is actually described accurately and it also exists. Okay, now as for Christina sacrificing Tick, this is where my theory comes into play. I think with Jiha's vision of Tick strapped down and passing out, that's got to be the moment where Christina does her sacrifice. Now the real question is, why and how would all this go down? Maybe Tick gives himself up voluntarily to protect Letty and his son. Now this could be a long shot, but I don't think it's going to be Tick that's going to be sacrificed. My theory is, I think it's actually going to be Montrose. He said that he has always thought that his death would come at the hands of a white man's bullet or a rope, but magic is just much more jazz. What if Montrose takes that transformation potion, which would require Tick's blood, and turns into Tick? Maybe they're going to trick Christina in some way, thinking that she has Tick as a sacrifice, but it's really Montrose instead. And I'm guessing because the magic with the blood and stuff, it might create like a loophole that could also fit in with Jiha's vision too. And who knows, maybe they just pull a fast one on us, the audience. And look, Montrose did say that he has every intention of saving his son and his grandson, even if it kills him, because family is very important to him. So I don't know, what do you think? During this whole time, Diana has had her own set of troubles after leaving the house. She went to the train station and started seeing two ghostly girls dancing and making their way to her like they were extras from a Michael Jackson's Thriller video. She quickly runs away. Now, were these the same girls from the shop earlier and they're just all twisted up? Well, Dee tries to escape back home, but the Black Doublemint twins just keep on following her. So Diana goes up to the racist police captain to confront him. Turns out that the curse he put on her also prevented her from telling anyone about the curse or the conversation that the police had with her. That explains why she started coughing and choking when she was trying to warn Letty back at the house. The racist captain said that he'll remove the curse in exchange for the orrery. Before she heads out, Dee checked the fool who got her mama's name wrong and spit on the captain's tie and followed up with a "F you, pig." You know what? I'm going to give her another pass. She got another pass. She good. Montrose and Tick are getting ready to cast a spell, and Montrose reveals to Tick that he's dyslexic, and Tick asks if there was any other secrets he's been keeping hidden away. Man, now y'all know Montrose gave that guilty look, and we know what Montrose's secret is at this point. Montrose reads the incantation, but nothing ends up happening. We cut to Christina and she's on the dock with two other guys. Before they begin, she whispers the spell that gives her the same mark of Cain that we saw before. Turns out that she hired these men to reenact the brutal murder that Emmett Till went through. She emerged from the water crying. I thought this was powerful. For a while now, I know that myself and probably other people have kind of questioned the level of sincerity in terms of like how woke is Christina. Well, as this show tends to do, we have yet another brilliant social experiment at play here. We have a white person live through just a moment of the black pain far too many have endured. I commend her character because she didn't have to pay that money. She didn't have to go through that experience, but she chose to go that extra mile to really understand what Ruby told her earlier about feeling what black people feel. I mean, this was, of course, an extreme way of going about finding some empathy, but the effort is surely there. So I have a question for people that are not black. If seeing or hearing about the deaths of unarmed black people do not affect you, let's just say you're desensitized to it, how did this scene affect you? We jump back to Letty's house and she confesses to Ruby that she's pregnant. Ruby in turn confesses that Christina told her everything and taught her magic. She tells Letty that she can be a white lady now. Ruby says that she wants to create her own space with her own power of magic. Look, I'm just happy that Ruby didn't snitch, because I was kind of worried about her for a little bit. But there's still that similarity that I'm talking about in terms of her and Hippolyta with their identity issues. I mean, Ruby's issue is that she's tired of feeling powerless in a white-dominated society that continuously oppresses her. I don't know. Maybe Hippolyta will come back and take Ruby on a trip. Diana is sick of the BS, and now she's getting her Home Alone on and waiting for the sister twins to show up. Dee is drawing up a storm depicting what these ghostly entities look like. She picks up a pipe and gets to swinging. Look, when Dee started swinging, all I could hear in my head was Raw Digger.
I beat that bitch with a bat. I beat that bitch with a bat.
Unfortunately, the Thriller twins ended up catching Dee, and it seemed to infect her body as she lay in Montrose's hands. Look, all I know is y'all better save Diana in episode 9. I'm not playing. You're not about to sit here and torment this little girl after you done killed her daddy, her mama's missing, her best friend is dead, and now she's got to die to these Proud Family ghosts? Nah, man, y'all not gonna do this to her. The police tried to come into Letty's house, but thankfully the protection spell from episode 3 is still up and working. So the racist police captain cannot enter in. So as a retaliation, the police open up fire on the house. Letty notices the mark of Cain is protecting her from the bullets. Tick arrives at the scene and Letty runs out to protect him as the police begin to target him. As one of the officers fires on Tick, a Sagoth comes bursting out of the ground right on time to have a late night snack of pigs in a blanket. Immediately after, the creature comes up to Tick for a little TLC. Turns out Tick's spell actually did work. Wow, now that is what I'm talking about. That was some real tension and suspense. I mean, when Tick was about to get shot, I was over here at the TV yelling like, Ricky! Oh, I mean, my heart was just racing. Then to see the Sagoth come out of nowhere and take a bite out of crime, oh, I loved it. Now, I don't know if it's confirmed or not, but I saw the Sagoth attack the racist police captain, but I'm not sure if he actually killed him. I saw him bite off his arm, but now I'm really wondering, did the racist police captain actually survive? Remember, this is the same guy that's walking around with stolen black people's body parts. So, what did you think about today's episode? My goodness. I mean, were there any favorite moments? I do apologize that this video is a lot longer than usual, but this one really hit home for me. There was a lot of different things to discuss, so I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on them. Now, I'm sure I probably missed some other Easter eggs or historical things, so if anybody noticed some stuff, please let me know in the comments down below so we can all talk about them. If you also had any additional insights or theories about this episode, post them in the comments, because like I said, every other time, y'all post some really insightful things and I love reading them. Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. I absolutely certainly appreciate it. If you like what you saw today, please give this video a like, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to this channel and ring that bell so you don't miss out the next time I make a video. You can also support my channel by sharing this video with other friends that might also enjoy it. Be sure to come back next week because we probably have a lot more to talk about with episode 9. In the meantime, I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all, and until next time, see you all later.